Hello, welcome back to Vintage Cookbooks and Crafts. In my first video, I made Criss-Cross Peanut Butter Cookies out of this 1951 edition of the Settlement Cookbook. And now I'm going to show you all three of my Settlement Cookbooks and then later talk about making aluminum-free baking powder. The 1903 edition, this is a facsimile, but it is a reprint of the original. This cookbook still has advertising in it that they started in 1901 in order to finance the publishing of this book. And so let's go through and see if I remember some of these companies. This is Waller and Hoffman Grocers. Dr. Sherman's baking powder, pure cream of tartar baking powder. I've never heard of that one. Amsterdam Coffee Company. Atlas Flour. Gilbert Commercial College. Milwaukee Western Fuel and Company. Milwaukee Woodwork. Wetzler Brothers Printing Company. Wholesale Grocers. Red Star Yeast. Red Star Yeast, I remember as a child when we would go past the Red Star Yeast factory. Some of the kids would say how terrible the smell was. That would be mostly the boys showing off, of course. But I always liked the smell of Red Star yeast. It reminded me of my mother baking. With 6 kids, my mother would bake 4 loaves of bread at a time. And she used Red Star yeast. Mayer's Shoes. Gas range. You need a gas range from Milwaukee Gas Light Company. The Milwaukee Gas Light Company would have Christmas displays at Christmas time, and they had the festive foods cookbooks. If you have heard about those, I have festive foods from about the late 1940s all the way up to about 1970. My mother received her 1957 edition of the festive foods when she bought a new gas stove. Schlitz beer. Everybody heard of that one. Let's see, wallpaper, ladies' clothes, paper shop. Blatt's beer. A Good Milkman. Brindley Dairy Company. I remember that name. Atlas Shoes. Gebhardt's Confections. Miller's Malt Extract from Fred Miller Brewing Company. And Young, the beer that serves you right. There were a lot of breweries in Milwaukee, and I remember the name Gettleman's also. And where I went to elementary school, it was on a hill above Miller Brewing, and our church was across the street from Pabst Brewery. This is the 1951 edition. My mother had the 1943 edition, and my older sister remembers her saying that we weren't supposed to touch it because it was a very special book. But she did let us make the Criss-Cross Peanut Butter Cookies out of it, and that I made in my first video, my first YouTube video. And I'll leave a link at the end if you'd like to see those cookies being made. My sister has my mother's cookbook now, so I picked up this 30th edition in enlarged and revised 1951 for myself, in the Settlement Cookbook compiled by Mrs. Simon Kander. Tested recipes from the Milwaukee Public Schools, girls' trades and technical schools, and authoritative dietitians and experienced housewives. This book was in my 7th grade home economics class. My elementary school went from kindergarten to 8th grade. There was no separate junior high. And when you got to 8th grade, they had graduation. The newest edition that I have is the new Settlement Cookbook, completely revised and updated. The first classic collection of American ethnic recipes, edited by Charles Pierce, and this is from 1991. There is no advertising. It was just in the earlier books where they used the advertising to help pay for the printing of the earlier cookbooks. This 1991 edition has some modern symbol that lets you know that you can use a food processor to save time and energy, and there's a little microwave symbol that would be next to some of the recipes, and then the heirloom, the little cameo heirloom symbol that these were old traditional recipes. The 1903 edition, besides having 25 chapters, it had a course of instruction given by the Settlement Cooking class, and there are 24 lessons, and each class has a different recipes and informational things for the students that came to the settlement house, the immigrants. The first lesson had they learned measuring, setting the table, washing dishes, to build a fire, making coffee, and scalloped apples. In the 1951 edition, scalloped apples now became scalloped apples Brown Betty. In the new Settlement Cookbook, the scalloped apples now became just plain Brown Betty. Now my sister remembers my mother's 1943. Well, my sister has that book. And she said she loved my mother's chicken. So occasionally on Sundays she'd make roast chicken, and she really liked the recipe that my mother used out of the Settlement Cookbook. Besides the roast chicken with the vegetable and potatoes and gravy, and I don't remember if she made dressing, stuffed the chicken or not. Probably not if she made dumplings. My sister said that she would have dumplings. What we called dumplings was not the baking powder, soft biscuit type dumplings of today. This is the recipe that she used: an egg, water, salt, and flour. That's it. It's Spitzen. And I'm probably not pronouncing it right. And you mix those together, and it's a stiff dough. And you just scoop a little with a teaspoon, a regular coffee teaspoon, and you put it into the boiling water, or boiling soup if you're making soup with dumplings. I always make my chicken soup with the German dumplings, the Spätzle. Interesting enough, I found it in 1991, has it, and they have Spätzle, and then in parentheses egg dumplings. And so we always had the German egg dumplings in our soup, and she made it with her spare ribs and sauerkraut. And my mother also made it evidently with her roast chicken. In the 1903 chapter 5, the mixture is called Mixtures with Baking Powder. And under general rules, it says pure baking powder is made by mixing 1 part of soda to a little more than 2 parts of cream of tartar, combining it with cornstarch or flour to ensure it's keeping. The cornstarch helps it to not clump, I guess. Cold milk or water should be used with baking powder. Like with yeast, you need warm water. With baking powder, you need cold. The oven must be hot and the pans greased before the mixtures are prepared. They should be put in the oven or baked as soon as they are mixed. That's because the activating ingredients start immediately as soon as the moisture hits them. 1 teaspoon of double-acting baking powder is equal to 1½ teaspoons of other baking powder. To make your own, combine 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar with 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Add 1 teaspoon of starch if you're going to keep it on the shelf for an extended period of time. When I have a recipe that calls for 1 teaspoon of double-acting baking powder, I will use ½ teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And if you're going to mix a larger batch together, which is 1/4 cup of baking soda, that's 1 part, 1 part cornstarch for storage, that would be 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and then 1/2 cup of cream of tartar. And you would shake that up in a jar and cover it tightly. 1 teaspoon of double active baking powder is substituted by 1½ teaspoons of your cream of tartar baking powder. But you can eliminate using the cornstarch if you're just going to mix it right away. Just 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar if you're making a batch of something that calls for 1 teaspoon of double acting.